Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my spin, my soul, Lolita.
Hello everyone, it is Skylar, and today I'm going to be talking about something I get asked all of the time. I get asked this all the time on mainly Tumblr, sometimes on Instagram, but it's just like everywhere. And the question is, can I wear Nymphet fashion if I'm this race, if I have this type of hair, if I have this body type, like if I'm this height? Just every physical aspect of yourself, I get asked that all the time. The short answer is yes, of course. This shouldn't even be a question. Yes, you can. So I think why a lot of people tend to ask this question is because in the Nymphet community, there's a lot of people who focus on specifically the relationship between Humbert and Lolita. I will definitely acknowledge that this part of the community exists, unfortunately. But that's why I'm here, to hopefully minimize those people. So I'm here to tell you, no, you don't have to actually try to look like a 12-year-old. That's just not what Nymphet fashion is. I specifically got into Nymphet fashion because I found pictures of my favorite Japanese idol in Japanese fashion magazines dressed in Nymphet fashion. So for me, it's completely just the fashion, period. It didn't have anything to do with the story for me. The story of Lolita could have been 100% different, and because Lolita wore those type of clothes and the settings that popped up in the movie popped up, I would still have gotten into the fashion, because that's what Nymphet fashion is. Nymphet fashion focuses on looking at what specifically Lolita wore, what type of settings were in the movie, the music even, because the music has it's very pretty, but it's also sort of mature, which I feel like is a good way to describe Nymphet fashion. And I also don't think that this issue is specifically just within the Nymphet community. I also think that this issue is even J fashion communities, basically any fashion that has something to do with dressing cute rather than completely mature and sexy. I feel like in Western countries, we have this pressure to dress even older than we are. It's like the second you put a ribbon in your hair, you're seen as childish, which I think is insane. I think it's a change of mindset too. You can wear cute things and not be intending to try and be a child. You can still like cute fashion and just to be your own self. So let me explain Nymphet fashion a little bit more. For me, I think a good way to explain the fashion is that there's a cute side to the fashion, and then there's a more mature, edgy side. I'm on the cute side of this fashion, so for me personally, this means I only wear skirts, I only wear dresses, I don't wear pants anymore. I completely just got rid of all the pants that I owned before because I basically just replaced my whole wardrobe when I went to Japan. So for me, Nymphet fashion is dressing very feminine. So I'm on the more cutesy side of Nymphet fashion. And I think some people seen this and they were thinking that, well, she's wearing Nymphet fashion and then therefore this is what I have to do to wear Nymphet fashion, which that isn't the case at all. Because while I'm over here, there can still be people over here on the more dark and cool side of Nymphet fashion. You don't have to specifically look at me for Nymphet fashion inspiration. I do think that the majority of people into Nymphet fashion do tend to go to this cutesy side, but just know that you don't have to do that. It's totally possible to wear darker colors and just wear, I don't know, more edgy sort of fashion with it. It's just for me, I don't do that. But because of this, I would encourage people to get into this darker, cooler sort of Nymphet fashion in order to promote it more, and to show that there is more variety when it comes to Nymphet fashion. You don't just have to dress in pastel pink and really cute and flowy and just really cutesy sort of aesthetics when it comes to Nymphet fashion. Because we have all of this. It's like Nymphet fashion is a spectrum. You can be very cutesy, you can be pretty mature, or you can be somewhere in the middle of that. The one thing I would say is that you don't want to go overly cutesy and you don't want to go overly mature, because if you go overly cutesy, I think you're going to end up, how do I say this? You don't want to look like an over-the-top J fashion Lolita. That's not exactly where you want to go. You still want to be within, this is the Nymphet fashion spectrum, but then there's this outside part you don't want to go to because it's just too far. You're just overdoing it at that point. And on the mature side, I would say an example of this would be fetish sort of outfit ideas. I don't know how to explain it, but I think that's just going beyond the point. Nymphet fashion is about balancing that cute and mature sort of style. So aim to be within the spectrum of Nymphet. So another thing is that you shouldn't be paying really that much attention to your physical appearance when it comes to Nymphet fashion, because it's about the clothing. So, for example, when we talk about Nymphet fashion, we're talking about, as we noted today, it takes mainly inspiration from the 1997 movie. And it's important to know this because this means that we're not looking at the 1962 version. And we should think about why don't we look at that version. The 1962 version simply just doesn't have the same unique aesthetics as the 1997 version does. In the 1997 version, first, it's colored, and therefore it's just that much more attractive to like the majority compared to the 1962 when I think it was the director, he decided to actually put the movie in black and white. So that makes things not look as pretty. There's also the fact that I watched this video and someone said that the fashion that was displayed in the 1962 version wasn't like actual fashion from like the 1940s, 1950s, aka the time period when Lolita takes place. So it just doesn't make sense. The only thing that's very unique or eye-catching when it comes to the 1962 version is the photo shoot, because that's where we get the heart-shaped glasses, because they don't even show the heart-shaped glasses in either movies. But today, the heart-shaped glasses are one of the most important things you could own. And another important idea to take from this is that in both movies, Lolita is still a little girl. So she's still supposed to be a little girl, she's still supposed to be white, she's still supposed to be short, but the thing that's different is the overall aesthetics in the movie. This is how we know that the fashion is more important in the 1997 movie, I think, because the Nymphet community could be choosing to mainly look at the 1962 version, because I'm sure all of us know that it exists, but we don't because it's just not attractive looking. So we go to the 1997 movie because that's the attractive one. And another thing I want to mention is that Nymphet fashion doesn't have any sort of personality trait. On Instagram, I asked you guys, do you feel any sort of pressures when it comes to Nymphet fashion? So it's like the way you act, how you should dress, stuff like that. Some people said that they feel more positive when they wear Nymphet fashion, so that's a good thing. However, I don't want people to think that they have to be into older guys or any sort of kink in order to be a part of the community, because that's not it at all. I don't think that has any part of the fashion. I think a specific thing when it comes to Nymphet fashion is that you constantly see similar poses happening. So you have girls in nice outfits, but they have a serious face. So I think that's like sort of a Nymphet, I don't know, motif when it comes to the fashion, but that's not a personality trait. That's just the way you pose for photos. Okay, so for my last thing I want to say, I'm going to be a little more mean this time. The difference between simply wearing Nymphet fashion and just liking the fashion, and then wearing Nymphet fashion, but also essentially promoting the relationship between a 38-year-old and a 12-year-old, is that Nymphet fashion can still exist without the story of Lolita. So for me, like I mentioned before, I got into the fashion because I seen Japanese magazines promoting it, and I'm sure these magazines wouldn't be promoting the fashion if they didn't see fit to their market. So if they thought that the fashion looked ugly, they would just step away from it and that'd be it. Because fashion magazines are for fashion and not for kink. So for me, I can say that if the 1997 movie wasn't physically presented the way it was, as in the clothing was different, the music was different, the setting is very important for me, like that the 1940s and 50s, if that was different, I wouldn't have gotten into the fashion itself. But on the other side, when you look at the people who are into the kink side of, I don't want to say the fashion, but the community, let's say that, I think we all know that they wouldn't be into the fashion if the relationship between Humbert and Lolita didn't exist. That's really the key point, because Lolita could be wearing the stupidest things from like the kids section in Walmart, but people who are into the kink specifically for that relationship will go on to wear those same ugly things simply because they're focusing on that relationship. Compared to if you're into Nymphet fashion for the fashion, you wouldn't be into the fashion if you didn't like the clothing. So let me also take the time to say, if you wear Nymphet fashion, don't tag your post sharing your outfits or whatever with DDLG or anything kink related. I think it specifically annoys me when people do it with Nymphet fashion is because they're specifically looking at the relationship between Humbert and Lolita. Compared to other people into DDLG, they're not looking at any sort of specific relationship. I don't know, I don't really want to go into DDLG itself, like it's just so not my alley. I'll also say that I don't care if you're into DDLG. I don't care if you're into any kink. I just don't care. As long as everyone's consensual, do whatever you want. And also, if you're an adult, it's just once you start mixing it into fashions is when I'm going to take an issue, especially Nymphet fashion for the reason I said before. Because they're specifically looking at a 38-year-old and a 12-year-old, and that is strange. Even if it's fiction, I still just find it strange. If you want to do that, you do that. Just keep it elsewhere. I don't want to see it when I'm looking up Nymphet fashion outfits and then I see just random naked people. That's just not what I'm into. Okay, so that is it for this video. If you want to see more of me elsewhere, I have a Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Tumblr. You can ask me questions on there. So yeah, if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!